Welcome, Internet family, to Love Chose You, a celebration of marriage. This episode is going to be about you. So I suggest you put on your seatbelts and get ready, because this one is going to be bumpy. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Free clothes, free education, free electronics, free food, free everything. Can you afford free? Get free products for yourself. Give away free products to others. Get paid. It doesn't get any simpler than that. Visit our websites. Your pocket will thank you.
Welcome back. In the last episodes that we did, the first 4 that we did for this series, we touched on several areas that were really a prelude to where we're trying to go. And we're just going to touch and review a little bit so you understand what's going on and you follow us, because it's going to be important that you do that. If you remember, the first episode that we did was called Baggage. And that episode touched on what happens to an individual before they get married and what they bring into a marriage based on all the experiences that they had before. And that's very important because, as you well know by now, that the person that you are before you were married is the person that you are going to be after you get married. And whatever you accumulate before then comes into your marriage. So you have to be very aware of what your spouse has in their baggage as much as you possibly can, as well as you have to be aware of what you have in your baggage as much as you possibly can, because you never know what's going to come out of your bag unless you have a strong character and you're in control of yourself by the Spirit of the Lord. And you never know what may or may not come out of your partner's baggage during the course of your marriage. Then we discussed the line. And interestingly enough, we got several responses back on that. And we would like to tell you that if you want to contact us, please feel free to do so, and we'll do our best to, give you whatever assistance we can. Again, we're not doctors, so we're going to be able to help you from our experience and from the experience that we've observed in others that we've known over the years. But during the line, we talked about getting out of your situation if there's any physical, verbal, mental, or any kind of abuse. And what we want to really make sure you emphasize, we're not talking about, when we talk about verbal abuse, let's just take that. We're not talking about you having an argument and, both of you going back and forth. And couples have that all the time. That's not a big problem. What we're talking about is when the abuse from one partner becomes so intense and so acerbic that the person who the verbal abuse is being directed towards won't even speak. They go into a shell. They just totally close up, and the abuse is so vitriolic that nobody can stand being around that individual who's talking to their spouse in a certain way. That's what we're talking about. We know a couple who the husband was extremely verbally abusive. As a matter of fact, it was embarrassing for us or any of us, any of the people who knew him, to be around him because of the way he would talk to his wife. And we had to pull his coat and say, listen, several of us went to him and said, listen, you can't talk to your wife like that. At least don't do it around us. We didn't want him to do it at all. The kids, it was so bad that the kids didn't even want to be around us. As a matter of fact, she actually got out of there because the abuse was intensifying, and it could very well have gone to physical abuse. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about just having an argument. You're going to have that. And you may have some intense and heated arguments. We're not talking about that. We're talking about when it gets so abusive that it's just, you just cannot stand it. And that person needs help in a situation like that, whether it's physical, whether it's verbal, emotional, mental, any type of abuse like that. You want to make sure that you get your partner the help that they need, but you may need to remove yourself from the premises in order to do that. Then we talked about the number one reason for divorce, which we found was selfishness. And that is very important to understand, because all the things that happen around individuals getting a divorce, the reason for that divorce is going to be selfishness, because they want what they want, and they're not willing to take into consideration their partner's feelings in terms of saying, okay, I'm going to not do this, or I'm not going to act in a certain way. I'm not going to do anything that is going to put my spouse in an uncomfortable position or just be inappropriate. And the number one reason we found was definitely selfishness in all its forms. And we want you to keep that in mind as we go forward. It's going to be very important when you see where we're going. Then we looked at the business of marriage. And we understand that if you have a successful business and you have a booming business and your marriage is falling apart, then you have not put enough time into your marriage. You're putting more time into your business than you do into your marriage. And that's not what we want. Let's take, for instance, Arnold and Marie Schreiber. You know that they're getting a divorce. Now, Arnold, I happen to like Arnold because I'm into bodybuilding. We're both into exercise, Delisa and myself. So we've always liked Arnold. Do you think that Maria Shriver thought that she would be in the situation that she's in now? What came into their marriage? What got in there? Selfishness on Arnold's part, because he has an affair with his housekeeper. And now he's saying that, he doesn't want to pay child support. Probably because he feels that Maria doesn't need it because she's a Kennedy and she has enough money. But whatever the reason is, he's acting in a way that Maria Shriver never thought that he would act. So what's the situation there? It's him. It's you. It's him. Right? So as Arnold needs to look in the mirror and say, listen, I don't know them. Of course, I don't know the situation. But he needs to look in the mirror and say, listen, I got a problem. I made a mistake, and try to make amends as much as is possible, as much as Maria will let him. Let's look at Mark Anthony and Jennifer Lopez. How many times has Jennifer Lopez been married? What is the common denominator in their marriage, in her marriages? Her. She's a common denominator. She's the problem. If you find yourself going from one marriage to the next, the problem is more than likely you. You have to look at yourself, which is not easy to do, because nobody wants to look at themselves and say, you know something, I'm a problem. I may be the issue here. But she's been married. She's probably going to get married again, and she's probably going to get divorced again, because the problem is her. She has to be able to know how to work within her marriage in order to not only be happy herself, but also to make her husband and her family happy. The reason that they're getting divorced is because for the sake of the children. That's sheer nonsense. How do you get divorced for the children's sake? No, she's the problem, and she has to look at this again. I don't know her, but she has to look at herself and say, why should I have been married 3 times, probably going to get married again, and have a 4th marriage? Now look at Mark Anthony. Mark Anthony was married before as well. He was married to a wife, and then, but from what we understand in the tabloids, he sees Jennifer Lopez, likes Jennifer Lopez, leaves his wife after they had just had a baby, and he gets married to Jennifer Lopez. How long do you think that was going to last? So here you have 2 people who've been going from one marriage to the next. Jennifer Lopez more than Mark Anthony, I believe. I don't really know their entire history. And now both of them are the problem. So you got 2 yous in there. So what are they going to do? They're going to split up? No, they have to say, listen, this is where it stops. And we got to look at our situation and make sure it works. Jennifer Lopez in the United States is much bigger than Mark Anthony. He's big around the world, rest of the world. But that's not the issue. We talked to you before about celebrity marriages. And celebrity marriages are usually, not in all instances, usually marriages of convenience. It's no longer convenient for them to be married, so they're going to get a divorce. That cannot work under any circumstances. You're the common denominator in your marriage. And if you don't look at yourself and make the necessary changes and adjustments, it's going to be the same thing over and over again. Wherever you go, there you are. And there you are in your marriage, and things aren't getting any better. And you see, you have the same problems with a new partner that you had with the partner that you had before. So you have to look at yourself very closely. So if your marriage is in trouble again, the first place you need to look is in the mirror, because you need to examine yourself. Get down on your knees and ask the Lord, show me what it is my problem. What do I need to change? What do I need to adjust? It is not going to be easy, because none of us None of us like to look at ourselves, examine ourselves, and say, I've got a problem and I need to change in these areas. But you are always going to be the problem first. Now, I'm not saying that your partner is not a problem, but always look at yourself first and say, what is it I'm doing that I need to change? And then after you've made that evaluation, you look at your partner and you guys come together and try to resolve whatever the situation. There's no situation that cannot be resolved. You resolve whatever situation it is so that you can keep your family together, you can keep your marriage together, and you can accomplish the goals that the Lord had for you in the first place. We're going to stop there for now, because what we're going to actually do in part 2, or U2, which is the second part of this, we're going to talk to you about a couple named Tom and Susan, who we know very well. We've known them for several years, and they went through some really horrible situations. And we're going to give you a glimpse into why exactly we're doing these, because their story is kind of what prompted us to do this. And there are many other stories, but we're going to share with you in part 2 their story and exactly what happened with Tom and Sue. That's not their real names, but they're real people, and people that we know. And we've counseled with them, and we've just talked with them, and we know them very well. But we're going to share that story with you in part 2. So come back with us next week, and we'll see you then. So remember that God loves you. We love you. We'll see you next week. And remember, love chose you.